Okay, welcome again to the Forensic Happy Hour, Lee Reber. And we have Brett Shavers again. Well, I mean, it was a long time ago. If you watched the feed, it was, I think, over a year and a half ago, I believe, on that with the conversation. So it'd be all fresh and new, I'm sure of that. So and some obviously good conversation. We never know which way it's going to go. Simply well, at least my beer I know is going to be here, and it's over when the beer's over. But I've been known to refill, so you never know. It might be bottomless. But we'll get going on this again. So Brett Shavers, thank you so much for putting up with me another time on the Forensic Happy Hour.
It's my pleasure.
Perfect. And cheers as well. And so obviously, I would say there's been a few things that have changed in the world and continue to evolve, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so we'll try to stick, but I can't say that I'm going to continue to stick to just forensics. You never know. So obviously, you've really and I don't want to say it's because the first time you're on the show, but man, you've just taken off. You become like a rock star on Twitter, and obviously you're speaking at a lot of places, primarily kind of around from processes, not necessarily being tool specific, because I know that's not how you are, but kind of on processes. Obviously, you have with DFIR training, and I think that's got some traction as well. So rehash a little bit for people, what you're doing, what you're kind of focusing on.
Well, like I said, I live into everything. It's full days and nights sometimes, but everything that I share or talk about is mostly things that I hit myself with a shovel. Of why did I do it that way? I should have done it this way, and especially in law enforcement, when you're trying to figure out what to do, and there's no mentors really, unless you have a good lab and some senior folks there. So everything I've done, I've messed up in the past, some way or the other, and look back on cases
Best
that
form
I've
to
done.
learn, right?
That's the way you learn. But I look back at some cases I did years ago, and I go, "Oh, Josh, I really did a bad job for that one." So I'll never do. So that's my goal. What I do in talking is, hey, here's some processes that I've used, and people tell me their processes, and I go, thank you for telling me that one because I could use that. So that's just you want to help others because you suffered. Why should everybody else suffer? You know?
Right. Right.
So that's
And so,
yeah.
yeah, and so on to that as well. I mean, the resources that you currently use, and that, obviously yours, put that out kind of as a training. It's really a repository for, a lot of things, right? I mean, books, you have different types of events. So give people a little bit about that. I mean, show your stuff off.
All right, well, okay. Well, the site, the DFIR training is, like I said, repository, and if you remember the days when there wasn't that much online for forensic stuff, or there wasn't
Yeah.
anything online really, right?
Right.
So that's what we're doing, taking notes. We're printing things out. We're trying to find books, highlighting, writing books and things. So that's what this is. It's instead of all of that putting on together online, so you can just search for an artifact, jump list, whatever, and everything comes up. Well, here's what the artifact is. Here's some tools that pull it. Here's some books and papers that write about it. You can cite these things in affidavits and reports, and it makes it much simpler. So it's something that I wanted, obviously, from the beginning, but I still use it. I use it for myself too when I'm writing things. I go, well, I know I put that in there somewhere. Let me search it. So that's what that DFR training is. And and with papers and things, I just did helped out with a paper with an expert witness with a Graham Horseman, and those go in there too, because if you're going to qualify as an expert, it's good to have a place where can I go to find specifically forensic expert testimony. So those are the kind of things that I put in there for everybody and myself, because I forget things probably every day. So it's one of those resources that I use for myself. And speaking, I try to give topics. I think the tech part of forensics is easy, really. I mean, it's not, well, it's simple. It's not easy to do, but it's simple to learn. Or here's a checklist. I ingest this image and I push this button and the things come out. But I think what I like to focus on is more the mindset of it's not just data. It's somebody's life or liberty or business, or something is going on. So the processes of yeah, you can click buttons, but you got to put the case together. Attribution is important. If you were wronged or somebody is missing. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
I'd like to focus on for that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting. I mean, obviously that's a realistic take on data, right? Truth and data, and it's I think that I don't want to say it's a dying art. I don't think it is a dying art. I think that people are being more cognizant of it because of, back in the day, we both, especially on the law enforcement side of it, it was always kind of one-sided, not necessarily one-sided, but it was, right? And so giving people and allowing people to understand it as one to, as you say, there could be some information on there that is going to exonerate someone, right? Or and so how do you go about kind of attacking a job or an examination to keep that open mind? Because honestly, people are jaded, right? The
Right.
world's jaded. I don't
Yeah.
know, right?
Right.
It's
Biased.
I'm just guessing. I'm kind of
Yeah.
guessing that, but if you look at it that way, how do you go into that really to understand? And I mean, kind of because you have to get that human element into it, right? You have to put so give us a little bit about that.
Well, like like you said, law enforcement view is you got a suspect and it's like, well, he's probably guilty, right? And many people investigations will try to push a case toward that person, where the good investigators say, well, let's try to find every excuse this person could ever have to make sure this is the right person. So you're trying to eliminate a lot of things. So when I go into any case, any client who says my client's innocent or guilty, I mean, my standing response is whatever the data shows is what I'm going to testify to. So it may be good for you, it may be bad for you. One other way, it's going to be just the facts or what they're going to be. So if your client truly is innocent, that's good. But if your client is guilty, that's all I can testify to if you put me on the stand. So I think having that mindset of the data is what it is, and the truth is what matters more than anything else. And I've even had a client fire me. I think I told this. I think recently before was it was IP theft. Files were copied basically, and did the exam on all these machines, and my conclusion was, yeah, I think your clients, you're defending, copied these files, and the attorney didn't believe me. He said his clients swore up and down on a stack of Bibles and everything else they didn't copy a single file, and I said, well, all I can tell you, this is what I'll testify to, and he fired me. So 6 months later, called me back and he said, well, my clients confessed they actually did copy it, and we want to hire you back for the rest of the case.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
again, and I think that is, I mean, that's very important, right? Is that if you look at really anything, I mean, because of course TV and the shows are always, I mean, it's true life, so we know when you watch those. But again, tongue in cheek, right? So, but in trying to and understand the case, I think that's an extremely important point. Is that if you look at all of the data, granted, I can take a small amount of the information and artifacts and really kind of paint a picture the way I want it, right? You can do that,
yeah.
but really, it's that is where you're not going to segment your investigation, right? It's going to be the entire investigation, whether it's multiple devices, a computer or some sort of cloud storage or whatever, and putting that information together, because it's those people that are going to go and segment things that you're going to have someone, an expert like you, come into and say, okay, well, let's look at everything, right? Let's look at this cloud information, look at this mobile device, look at this computer information or whatever, and put it together, right? And now you have all the information that might be in it, which makes that this smoking gun look like, yeah, no, this is only a small piece of it. I mean, would you agree with that?
Right. Yeah. There's I mean, the only thing that I would say where you can segment or use a little thing is as part of a tactic in investigation. So, like for example, I mean, we had a massive data, and I mean, just so much to look for. Don't even know where to start. In this one case, and just doing a quick, well, what devices were plugged into a machine and running, and you see, these Apple devices and such, and just bring that in an interview process of, well, on this date and time you plugged in this device, and that opens up the floodgates of confession. Well, you don't have to do the whole. I mean, what you got a confession. You really don't have to do a whole forensic exam. That kind of, I would use that as an example of the low hanging fruit. Not,
Yeah.
but
So do you think in that though? Not to interrupt you, but I just did. I didn't mean to, but I'll lose my train of thought, right? So the thing though is the big thing now, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but triage, right? I go in and I triage. I set up my parameters of what I want to go in and extract. Could that cause issues, or is that more of a tool to say, oh crap, I found this and now we need to go and dive in further? Or are there people that are utilizing that as a smoking gun?
right. Yes, 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 and no, no, yeah, yeah,
Yes, it's like on a test. C C B C.
yeah. Triage is probably the only way to really do cases now. I mean, in the civil world, it's all about money, as in we only have a budget for doing so much. In the criminal justice world, it's still about caseload. Not really about money, but just the amount of time. So triage does, I think, it has good and bad. It's a double-edged sword, right? You have you find what you need, and you have other corroborating evidence, like a confession, admission, or something, to say, yeah, we have enough. But then you have some triage that may not be really enough, and running with that in a case, that's kind of iffy for me. So finding something in triage is something I think to dig into. So if you find one thing out of 10 of your triage, dig into that one to make sure what you're looking at is not just the low-hanging fruit, but something to support it as well.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about that too, I back in doing kind of mobile devices, or just doing that quick and just, I mean, here's the extraction and here's the data type of stuff, that has gone on, and it's getting better, right? That people are actually looking into stuff a little bit more, but do you think that now we're getting into the realm of, and I'm talking just computers really, is that people are relying on the data from a triage, saying, and the crutch of, yeah, because I can't get 14 terabytes of data that I'm going to look and go through. So I get that, I do. But do you think that people are utilizing the triage and the data that's from that for their entire case, or are they going back to go in and look at it?
I think, again, it depends. I spoke to,
Like a lawyer, it
you know,
depends.
it's it's one of those that depends, right? I spoke to someone not too long ago, and for his illicit images cases, right? He does a quick once over of, oh, they exist on the machine, files the case, and they're all pleading out. And that's the evidence is the images exist. These illegal images exist, not where they come from, how they get there, nothing else other than they exist, file the case, and you have a plea. And my assumption is those who have been pleading guilty are guilty, right? That's what we hope is true. They're pleading guilty because they're guilty, right? But that's the extent of his examinations for those cases is, hey, they exist. I copied them over and sent them over to the case. They're done. So I don't think that's a good way to do. I don't think that's forensics, really. I think that's looking at Windows Explorer and say, oh, there's bad stuff here. So
Yeah, so I mean, how does that, if someone is, obviously, if they're not guilty, or if they're guilty, we're not going to take a side on it, but they're going to say, hey, we're going to go to trial on this, and this is the investigation that's been done. I mean, how are they going to have to go and redo it? Or are they going to, because I would say, if you would have someone else that is going to be the advocate for the state, or the defense, whoever did this short little triage thing, they're going to get blown up in court.
yes, well, my answer to that is it depends. so,
I
so
love it. Love it.
there's a fairly old, I would say old, I don't know, 10 years maybe, a case in Spokane, Washington, where a firefighter was charged for possession of child pornography. And it's publicized and everything. And he swore he was innocent. And I think he got fired. His family shunned him. I mean, whole 9 yards of everything.
Yeah.
And he fought it all the way, and come to find out he was definitely not guilty at all of anything. It was someone stole his credit card and downloaded child porn on his credit card. So that was one of those investigations that was the low-hanging fruit of, hey, it exists. He's guilty, file the case. But there are others who plead guilty and they still maintain their innocence, but they're facing 5 or 10 years. So it's one of those when you have a hammer over your head, do you continue to fight it or not? And my only concern is, was there a good investigation done? Because a bad investigation ends up in a guilty plea that's not guilty. It's really not, that's not good, but it happens.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that too is that that person, even though they are exonerated of that, right, or the charges aren't filed on that, it's been drug in for what, months on how bad this person is because this is what they did. And I mean, even in today's culture and today's media, right? I mean, that is almost worse than actually you were found guilty.
Yeah, well, I did sue, and I can't remember how much it was either settled or judgment, but the state patrol apologized publicly on the
Yeah, but
news.
how much
And
money? How much money does it take, for you to actually gain your reputation back, right?
oh, it would take a lot. it would
Yeah,
it would
right.
take it would take a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, you own your own island and planet
Right.
somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so again, that's super important. I think that before people really go, um, again, so that's a big plus for if you know either that you've been wrong. I mean, if we're talking about that, you have someone, say the government, that's winding up and looking at the information that you have, you would want to have someone that has the training, right, the wherewithal, someone that's able to dive into this information, and have that type of the ability, right? Because I mean, a lot of the times, especially when I was in law enforcement, a lot of those people that would represent or have their experts were hamstrung, right? They weren't allowed to go to training because these training companies, I won't mention any of the names, but they won't allow them unless they were law enforcement. And you know what? That's kind of to me, that's that's a detriment to those people that want to, and they know for sure that this, I need to have a professional look at this information. Has it changed?
Some, I mean, were you around during the iLook days,
Yeah. Oh
right?
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All
Yeah.
right. So I took an iLook class, way back, and then I used it for some cases, and then I quickly realized, well, the other side can't use it, and I'm getting some questions on it, and I just said,
Right.
well, I'm not even going to try to use something that I'm going to have to argue why I'm using it. No one else can use it for the defense. It just didn't
Yeah.
really make a lot of sense. And there's still some training like that. For me, it seems, I guess, not cheating, but like one upping. Like, we're going to control this one, so it gives us a winning card. So we can go to this training, but you can't. Therefore, you don't know what we're doing. And I don't believe that there's anything secret in those law enforcement training. I mean, we've been to those trainings. It's not like
Yeah.
you walk in. I mean, I've had security clearances, and I've gone to briefings, and I walk out of the briefing, and I go, "What was so secret?" you know,
Right.
because there really isn't any much things that's secret. It's the perception of, well, we can't go to that training or we can't use that tool, so it's unfair. So I think just the perception is the reality part, but it shouldn't be, um, closed training or closed software just because it doesn't seem a fair balance in a
Yeah, I
trial.
don't. Honestly, I mean, there are times when obviously people shouldn't be, those people that either don't have the clearance should be involved, and that's typically has to do with names and methods and those types, right? But
Right.
but not necessarily if you are. This is how the software is utilized. This is how you should properly. This is where artifacts are located. This is how you should utilize this purchase that you made. I mean, that's there's absolutely should be none. And I know a lot of people, well, a lot of companies, majority of them have changed that just for that fact, right? But it's again, that comes down to, again, your resources, right? You put a lot of that information out there. It's free for consumption for everyone. It gives people avenues to go in and look for that information. And honestly, during the last couple of years of whatever this has been, has brought a lot of repositories and a lot of communication for people and given them avenues to go in and look for that type of information and grow, as well as being able to contact a lot more people. I've had people reach out to me. I've reached out to a lot of other people to have conversations about the industry or forensics in general. I mean, I've learned a ton about cybersecurity stuff just from those people either on the social media side or actually reaching out and conversing with them, which is it's really been interesting. I don't want to say the ease like I'm a stalker, but being able to go in and communicate with someone or get a hold of them, and they get a hold of you right back, right? So I think that's been pretty good.
Yeah, it's that has been a positive, I guess. And like, I mean, the old days when you're trying to learn something, um, we didn't have Zoom and all those things, back then, and just calling up the neighboring agency and asking them, and they don't know, they're calling around, and by the time you get the answer, you're a week or 2 weeks into just one little thing, and by the time you get the
Right.
answer, you go, geez, that was so simple. How come I didn't figure it out? I just wasted 80 hours trying to figure out just one thing. So today, it is you can search on Twitter. Oh, there's what I'm looking for. You can search on the website. That's what you can ask somebody. They know the answer. So it's great for that.
Yeah, honestly, like the listserv, like the ISIS listserv, was always the go-to back in the day. I would put something on there or answer something on there or have everything. It was like kind of the big thing. But honestly, I mean, there are so many other little places that you can actually go, and you can actually just talk directly to the person that even wrote something.
Right.
And I think that's been, obviously, it's been pretty great. There's still between other businesses and everything else, obviously there are some issues, but the individuals that are involved in it have been pretty good. So it was funny when you brought up iLook. So back in the day, MFI training, that the company that I had back, especially when I was in law enforcement, actually went in and I went to gosh, I want to say it was IRS CID. Um, in Virginia, and it was that's I mean that's I think the developer, one of them in the first versions of iLook, that had that with the information on that. I thought it was IRS,
Yeah, that's
but
that's that's the one I took. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I wound up having that and going through and doing all the different types of training on that, and I thought the same thing too because it was again only for with the law enforcement side of it. But now other companies they just say, hey, you know what? We'll just charge corporate people more than law enforcement, and so
Right.
but it's the same thing. So
Right.
I don't know. So on that, I mean, how much are you on the road? I mean, going in, do you do the majority of your or the cases that you do? I mean, locally, or I mean, are you flying around everywhere?
Well, for the past couple of years, I think everyone's been not flying around very much.
No, no,
Right. Yeah. So FedEx is everybody's friend nowadays, and so is remote connections. So that's hopefully that's I think that's a good thing. Hopefully to continue. FedEx has always been around for shipping things back and forth, but the remote really helps a lot with some data, not obviously everything, but
right.
yeah. So that's what I'm try to keep it that way. It's
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? In that, I always talk about, I mean, I guess if there are some positives, right, it has to do with innovation, people innovating to go in and accomplish those goals, right? Where somewhere where you had to go in, you had to fly somewhere, you had to go to another country, you had to do everything else. When everything else you can have personal relationships. Everyone. It's funny. Everyone puts tape or used to put tape over their webcams. Now everyone
yeah.
keeps them open because they have to use it all the time, right? So they're
Right.
like, screw it. If someone wants to look at me, whatever. But because I have to have it on every day to have conversations, I think there's positives and negatives to that. Everyone wants to have some personal contact. But as for if we want to talk about acquiring information, acquiring devices, being able to go in a remotely process and do all that stuff, I think it's I mean, in the 2 years, it has gone from hey, this is cool. I don't know if it's because of billable hours that people wanted to do it, and then you have the necessity, and they're like, hey, actually, I can do this. I think that's been a positive for sure. So because one, I feel sorry for any of the industries that obviously with travel, anything
Yeah.
else. But as for accomplishing your goals, a lot of it can be done right remotely.
Yeah. Not only just that, if you consider totality of a case expenses, and you're adding travel,
Right.
time on site, watching that
Right.
progress bar move
Mm-hmm.
for hours, and those sort of things, which leaves however much budget for the actual analysis, which can be the smaller part really of everything. And now we're
Sure.
flipping that upside down where we're not watching the progress bar. We're not flying, 8 hours here, 8 hours back, staying in hotels. We're actually connecting directly, grabbing what we need, and majority is going to be analysis. So we should have a better analysis, since we
But
have
the price remains the same.
price means the same, but the analysis is better. That's the key.
Exactly.
Better
Exactly.
value,
That's you're like, hey, yeah, you charged me this, but you flew here. Yeah, no, no, no. It allows me more time to operate and to look at the information that you have.
which is
Right.
true.
Exactly. No, no. I agree. And that's it's the same thing, right? As a company is going to pay the least amount that they can, right?
Yeah.
To go in and to decide. So if we talk about that on the corporate side of it, did you see people transitioning more to an internal team rather than paying for services?
You've been hearing that for years. I think. I think it goes back and forth depending on, I would guess, what happens to a corporation's litigation, what they just went through. I think that kind of drives where they're going to go next, and then the next litigation probably changes that boat again. So I think it just depends on, on money, obviously, and if they did
Yeah, I think you're
bad.
right. Yeah, it always every company comes down to how much I'm spending, right? And so if they see my spend for an external entity doing all of the forensics versus, hey, can I pay an individual to do that? I don't necessarily think that. Well, I can tell you right now, C-level people look at an X. Now here's the dollars that I have, right? And versus here's the dollars that it costs. But really, honestly, if you're going to go in, how much do you think? And I mean, just spitball. How much do you think it would be to hire a person? They don't have necessarily a forensic background. Well, no, sorry. Maybe they just came out of school and they have, or went to a school. They have some sort of forensic background. How much do you think cost in say years to work before they can support the company as a say someone as seasoned as you comes in to do that?
I think it'd be better to look at it, um, for any of us, is, when you hire somebody, whatever expectation you have, if you want to hire them, a person at a level of who has 10, 20 years of experience, that's obviously going to take 10 or 20 years to get there.
Right.
But if you're hiring someone just out of school, bare bones minimum, they can probably do 75% of what you need. The low hanging fruit, the
Right.
bare minimum of cases. And then for that remaining 10 to 30%, you can, sub that out elsewhere.
Right.
And then during that time, your new person will grow to handle 80, 90%, 99% of the cases. So I think it depends on what the company wants. Do we want someone who can handle practically everything? We're going to pay for it because of, it costs a lot to hire somebody to do practically everything. Or do we hire what we can afford and we'll sub the little bit that we don't? I mean, corporations do that with attorneys all the time. We have your in-house counsel and you have your contracted counsel. So it's one of those, you can hire someone to cover most of it, and the little things that might come up might not ever come up. So that's it's a business decision on what to do. If you need somebody right away to handle everything, then you got to pay. So the time, it depends. The more money you pay, the shorter time it takes to get the person up to speed.
So typically when you're dealing with, because a legal team, right, is typically someone you might be dealing with at a company. How versed are those legal teams now in understanding digital evidence?
Better than they were. So, uh, but still not that great. Um, I'm trying to think of, the city of Seattle has a lawsuit, and it's a pretty big one. It's on deleted text messages from public records, cell phones, and the city contracted out with an out-of-state forensic company, and I can't remember the name offhand, but there's 4 cell phones involved, and the total cost of the analysis, just for deleted text messages, I believe the last number I saw was $457,000.
So these are city employees that looking for text messages that had been deleted.
Right. The mayor the former mayor, former chief of police, they just got I think the chief resigned, rather retired, and the mayor didn't run again. So, and then 4 phones between them. So someone had requested public records
Right.
for text messages, and many were deleted. And they knew that, through whatever. And the response by the city of Seattle was to hire this company to try to recover them, and they didn't. And it cost upwards of $500,000 for 4 phones.
It still costs. So hey, by the way, we can't get these back, but we tried, and so here's 500 G's invoice.
Yeah, I got the report. I'll send it to you. It's online, but it's they use every tool in the book you can imagine.
Really?
And they went to the cloud and everything else, and
they
get
still charged them that.
Yeah, it might be $500,000 by now, but it's they still charge. So you're looking at the city, I believe, could have hired one person who can do everything with cell phones, everything for cell phones. And also, I think it took them over a year to do this. So over a year with 4 phones. So they could have hired me for a year for less than $500,000.
Unbelievable.
Right. So I think
those governments, right? Those are the governments, and then they're complaining that they don't have a whole bunch of money to do any work, but they go in and they buy the $100,000 toilet seat and spend $500,000 to get nothing.
Pretty much.
Wow. Yeah. The bad part about it is that's pretty typical, I would say, right? For a lot of people that they're spending this money that you're like, you're doing what? For what?
Well, It goes back to the question that you asked of does a council know? Does in-house council know? And that would be one of the ones that I would say that they did not know. Because if you know what it cost and you're kind of aware of what it is, the last thing you're going to do is write a check for $500,000 for 4 phones. I can't imagine a case that's $500,000 for 4 phones.
You would think that they would have some professional on board. I mean, obviously Seattle PD is quite large, and I know that for sure that they have people that know and understand digital forensics. That they would just maybe reach out to them and saying, "Hey, can you guys reach out to some companies and just let me know? So here's the specifics of the device, and here's everything else like that. And what's a possibility? And these are the dates. The possibility of maybe getting this stuff back. Just maybe research it."
You think so?
Because you're going to hire a company, a service provider, and they're going, yeah. So here's my retainer, and this is what I'm going to go in and charge you for. So yeah that's kind of crazy. So go back to the legal stuff. I mean, how important is it for opportunities or training for people who are attorneys, right? Why is it so that you don't have schools that are primarily, or I'm guessing that they should have digital evidence coursework at universities, right? But I don't know. I would say probably not. Here's a computer. There might be some good stuff on it, and you might be able to use it. But would you think it would be important that they have some sort of training, right?
Well, I believe. Well, my son's in law school now, so maybe I'll ask him if anything. But,
I would honestly, I would like to know and find out about that. I know that NCFI has a prosecutor class, right? That does it, but again, it's prosecutors. So I would say there's a lot more people that are, say, attorneys that aren't prosecutors than there are prosecutors. So I would think that there should be some opportunity, just like you would have non-LE that have opportunities to go some training.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, but from what I've seen and talking to attorneys, they're always busy. They're just whether it be.
And you're not busy. You're not. So, but you have opportunity.
You know what I mean. Right? They're always saying they're always running around and billing and busy. Exactly. And
billing is a truth right there.
Right. And they have that mandatory training, whatever hours they need per year, right? Yep. And a lot of that is just got to be in this topic and that topic and such. So I don't see throwing in, unless they're interested, I don't see throwing in another, I don't have to take digital forensics or training, so I'm not going to, because I need to bill those 40 hours instead of taking a class. I got to take these other classes. I mean, it's just like law enforcement too. You got to take your bloodborne, your airborne, and all those other things, and you'd like to take life-saving street survival stuff. So I think that's the problem with the way the law field works.
But I mean, think about it. and I get it. I'm 100% behind you on billable hours, and that's why if they can't charge for it, um, yeah, every time I go and I send it to our attorneys, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, man. I don't even want to, and they complain, how come you didn't send that to me? Because, man, if I just say hi to you, you got to charge me money. So, looking at that though, that's crazy to me is that they're not and all these different because they all have to be certified, right? I'm sure they have to have that every year. They have to have they have to have certain number of hours that they have. What would you say the percentage of their cases have to do with it or have some sort of digital evidence in it? I mean, yeah, I took a picture of my wiener and now I'm going to do that. I mean, send a text message, and I would say 99% of cases, there's some sort of digital evidence in it, I would think.
Yeah,
Even civil.
I yes, I believe that to be true. It just depends on, and I've seen this. I mean, face to face with attorneys. We know there's computers with evidence involved, but we're doing it this way. And for me to say things like, well, I can probably find it in an hour. I'm not saying that it happens, but that could cut away 1,000 hours of billing hours for an attorney, perhaps,
Okay.
right? Or 100 or whatever it is. They bill crazily. So I think that's could be an issue with some attorneys with and I've seen it, personally, where there's the computer, we don't want to touch it. Even just one example that was it was a laptop. Former employee left, stole whatever client list, that kind of thing, and he had reinstalled Windows on it, and the attorney didn't want me to look at the laptop, and I said, well, I can. I was almost begging. I mean, it's got to be there, So I looked at it and I found, we covered the previous installation, the files, and just found enough to say, yeah, absolutely, it did happen, and that was pretty much the whole case. And he wasn't very happy with that because he was happy in one sense that that was the case, that proved the case, but that was also the end of the case for the most part. So I think that billing is always going to be an issue with some attorneys, not all. You know, I mean, what
Human
can you
beings.
do?
Let's get the
Yeah,
human element. If we can take the human element out of a lot of this stuff, right? I
yeah.
mean, breaches. If you talk about cybersecurity, if you removed actually a person from the keyboard, or it's just again, it's to me, it's craziness, and I think that had to do with. I mean, even back in when we started talking about and we do with the do forensics and you would go into a case and you're testifying and the defense attorney goes, yeah, dude, I might have to have you help me because my phone's not working, can you just repair it? That was a question that you would have, and honestly, I don't want to say it hasn't gotten any better, but it hasn't gotten any better. And I don't know what the story is. I remember going in. I did fire investigation, also back in the day, where it kind of transitioned into them asking you 300 questions that they would have, and so you'd go to I went to post blast with ATF, and I have all these the classes, and they gave you all these 300 questions that actually were sent out to all defense attorneys. These are they're going to ask you, and seriously they do, and ask you all this different type of information. But they transitioned and they started doing that, especially with computer forensics, right? Is that there's these questions. All right, and they're just reading these, the file path. So you found this picture, and this picture, was it temporary, right? Was it in just internet cache, or was it actually going store? I mean, it's verbatim what they read, and you do the same thing, right? And so it's to me, it's just I don't think it's gotten any better.
I would say it depends on the attorney. There's one attorney I had a case with. This case lasted a long time. Like, it's my world record length of a case. I think it was 14 years total, and because it just bounced around different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And the last attorney that got the case, because it obviously went through a bunch of different law firms, didn't know much about computer forensics at all at the beginning, and a year later, completely impressive. He learned so much and I mean, he was on Johnny on the spot. When I would say something, he knew what I was talking about. And I complimented him that he did such an amazing transformation from not knowing anything to knowing some really deep level forensics. So it depends on, I think, on the attorney too.
Well, Brett, I think you know what? Actually, I think the key is the expert that they're working with, right? The expert that they're working with, one, I don't want to say intrigues them, but educates them. I think that that is extremely important, that those people that are working for them don't just as, hey, I'm your expert and I'm sending you an invoice, but really kind of educate them and get them interested. And you'll know the attorneys are like, yeah, no, I'm not going to listen to you. But you'll know the ones that are really kind of going in, kind of digging it and understanding. And I think it's those attorneys that will flourish, right? Because one, they kind of get it. They kind of get it and understand how important, one, the data is, and then they can ask the right questions. And I think that comes down to the expert that they hire. I can tell you right now, if they're not going to hire an expert and they're going to kind of just wing it on those others, it comes down to a list of questions that they will go and continue to read off the other side of it, right? So I mean, to circle back on that, I think that, and hey, you have DFIR training. I don't know if there's some resources. I know there's some other places that, but to try to, again, I think that those people, people should have access to that, and be able to go in and one, people are going to choose what they want to go in and I was going to say believe, but that's pretty much what people choose to do that.
Yeah.
But actually, if they have the resources to do that, it's going to be upon them, right? They're
Right.
going to have to take that upon themselves to do it. But if the resources aren't there or aren't available, people are lazy.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're not going to go in and look into trying to get some of the information by themselves, right?
Well, sometimes it takes an experience to create a motivation.
True.
Some people are going to drive forward no matter what. I mean, they're just, no matter how difficult it is, they're going to keep on going. And others, like you said, are lazy until they get the hot seat. I was testifying in a federal case, and the opposing expert in front of me was explaining backup tapes, recovery, that kind of thing. And I'm listening in the back. I'm taking notes because I'm going, oh, geez, this sounds really complex, and I'm trying to take notes what's going on. And I mean, I understand what's being said, but I'm going, oh, she's really getting complicated. And I had already testified about my thing on backup tapes and stuff. And I'm going, oh, man, I'm next, whatever. And the judge stopped her and asked her, explain this to me again. And he explains to me again. And he 3 or 4 times he's asking her to explain the same thing. And the judge turns to me in the back of the courtroom and he goes, can you tell me what she's trying to say? And I said, well, I think she's saying this. And then the other expert said, yes, that's what I'm saying. And the judge says, thank you. And I went, okay, this is a good day. But I'm saying that the client hiring that expert who can't explain what they want to explain to the court, who needs to understand it. But I'm sure now she learned from that day, oh, yeah, I need to take some remedial communication classes to get these points across or something.
Right.
So
sometimes which is extremely important, right? It's extremely important because, I've done it myself. You go in and you have the, I mean, not to pimp Nancy Grace, but I was on her show, right? And she completely belittled me. Because that's what she does, right?
Yeah.
And because the reason it was about that the case, what was the gal, Utah, and the what's it? I want to say Laramie, but Utah. She was abducted, wound up, and then they found him in the swamp or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And, yeah. So anyway, I'm on her show on the podcast. And she's like, okay, well, let's talk about this. I have, Lee Bernice this, and you know what? We're going to talk about the cell phone and, cellular data and triangulate. And I just went, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I was talking so crazy and fast, and I got so excited. And she's like, hey, stop, and kind of just brought it back down. And try, because on radio, right, you have to be very articulate. You have to talk very slowly, and you have to talk at a level that people kind of get that have absolutely no idea what talking about cell phone records, talking about cell phone forensics, talking about data that's still on there. Because I go from cloud, I go from this, I go from SIM cards, and I mean, perfect thing. And I mean, honestly, I think that is extremely important to be able to articulate to people that have no idea what this means and put it in a way that they're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yep. It
right?
takes the attorney to to control that in court too. Where their witness is going farther than what the expertise level is of the court to bring it back down. And it takes the expert to say, "Oh yeah, got it. I need to
Yeah.
slow down."
Yeah, and I think that is again super important. That, but still, I mean, it's 2022, right? And granted, we missed a couple of years, but if we talk about on the forensic side of it and digital information has been around for a long time, right? People have utilized computers. It's not like we've been rolling rocks around, and I mean, for people to catch up in kind of the legal side of it, it's been extremely slow.
It still comes down. Like I keep saying to the person, it's just like when you call 911, you might get Barney Fife or you
Right.
might get Jack Reacher,
Right.
and you don't know who you're going to get. And if you have a choice, you want to pick the best person to solve your problem. And I say that in the law enforcement world, and I say that in the private world because a resume could look really good, but I've subcontracted with people who have called me things that I had a serious case. Hey, can you do this? Because I can't fly there. I got to fly someplace else. And then I get an emergency call of, I'm here doing this for you, and I don't know how to do it. And I just go, wow, your resume shows me that you should. And I'm walking the person, this expert, through the phone of, okay, step one, step two. So the resumes aren't, it's the person.
Yeah.
And you don't know
Yeah, it's
until
not the
you,
certifications, right? It's not that, hey, I have all these things in back of my name, that says that I'm bitching, that I have all these other things, right? I think it comes down to a lot of, because there's a lot of people that I mean, are just brilliant, and have
yeah,
absolutely zero. Anything around their name, anything else like that, they are just brilliant at what they do. But then I've had people that are professional students on everything else, and I'm like, what?
yeah. And
You
then
know?
you throw the lazy part in there, whether they're brilliant or not, and nothing matters because if there's not the motivation to do it or the desire to do it, doesn't matter what skill they have. I'm just another example, I guess. A missing child case, and I was called. Here's a laptop, and I rushed over there as fast as I could because I thought, wow, it's a lured child. Um, so I go to the detective's desk, and there's a laptop sitting on the desk, and it's closed, and he's got a cup of coffee, and he's basically feet up on the desk. And I'm going, okay, let's get started. What's going on? And anyways, the thing was, she was missing for 6 months, and they had the laptop for 6 months, and they tried to image it, and it didn't image it, and this and that and the other. And I said, well, I'm talking cell phones. Does she have a cell phone? Yeah, we'll get the cell phone records. And I'm going, I said, 6 months, she's probably dead. I mean, not to be cruel, but she's probably dead. So he gives me the laptop, and I go, I'll do what I can. Any hints or clues? And there's none. And I go, so 6 months, we have no clue. And I look at the laptop, and all the dates are within the past month that's been. And I'm going, what in the world? So I'm calling, and I go, when did she disappear? And turns out the detective opened up the laptop. He logged into Facebook. He's doing all these things on the laptop. I'm going, oh, for the love of God. I'm going. So in result, she was dead, and never looked at the cell phone. I'm explaining to him, you can find where the cell phone was, and where it might be and where it went. But I mean, 6 months was way too late. So that's the laziness part of and in that particular case, I will say she was dead within the first couple of hours. So there was no way that I don't believe she couldn't have been saved.
Yeah,
But
but
in
still
other
the
cases,
education, right?
yeah,
I mean, the
yeah,
education. I think that is just there should be. You go to post, and they should be. It's been a long time, obviously. What I want to say since you've been, but me too, right? There has to be a week's worth of material on that of understand, not necessarily going down into the level of dislevel or anything else, but understanding the information that can be held. Now, granted, the majority of people that may be transitioning or into law enforcement, right? They want to be and come into law enforcement. I, the kids now, right? That they understand what that is, and I won't do any personal stuff on
well, I
kids
will say
now,
this:
but
I was giving a presentation to a um, violent crimes, whatever it's called, not task force, conference, violent crimes
yeah,
conference, and I just said something about suicide, and there's a computer there or phone. And hey, if you got a suicide, you might want to check this out because who knows when the suicide letter was written. And this detective's eyes, this deputy in the back, his eyes got like this. He's taking notes. And so by the end of the week, he comes back and he turned, I mean, just by coincidence, right? Turned the suicide to a homicide because he had the forensics team look at the computer, whatever it was, and the details. And I went, oh, that's very cool. But he was completely moved into a new direction of investigations of technology. It wasn't a technology conference. It was an investigation conference.
Right.
But that one thing probably changed his career. Because
yeah. It's again, it just, again, I shake my head. I'm like, man, digital evidence in today's world. I mean, it's have you ever seen Murderville?
No.
So look at it. It's
Okay.
so it's a spoof. It's with Will Arnett. I'm like now pimping out shows. But it's a remake from a UK show, and the thing behind it is they always have a celebrity on there that actually plays themselves, but they have no idea the script that's going on, you know. And he's this Terry Seattle, I think, is Will Arnett's name, and he has like this flip phone, boom, and I mean, so it's kind of that mentality of just back in the day, this is what we did, and this is how I'll continue to do it. I'm not going to look at that digital data because I'm going to get this guy to tell me exactly what happened, and I'm just going to read the scene, you know, and make sure that I this is going to tell me everything I need. I know there's a cell phone there. I'm not going to look at it. I know there's a computer. I know they have an online presence. No, I'm going to stay away from it. It's still going on.
It depends on the person. It all comes down, and not just this goes for prosecutors too. When a prosecutor has a case, I know that, and judges too. I mean, you know, when you write affidavits, some judges, when they know you, it looks like they're not even reading your affidavit.
Right. Boom.
It's like, yeah, and I would say, Your Honor, please, you know, if it's incorrect, make sure. Yeah. But they trust.
It says that I'm taking their firstborn.
Right. So, and the same with prosecutors and detectives filing cases, and it's the same with private attorneys hiring people. They know after a good experience or a bad experience who to hire, not to hire, because if they're not doing it, if they're not taking the phone on the floor, and I've done those cases where I have told attorneys, in one case particular, there's a hard drive, an external hard drive under the desk where I'm just engaged to image the computer and the laptop. And I call and I say, just so you know, there is a external under the desk. Shall I image it? And nah, we just need the computer. And you know,
Don't
a year
worry
later,
about it.
Yeah, a year later, I'm getting questions on this USB device I was plugged in. It's very critical. What can you tell us about it? And my only answer is, it was under the desk, probably. You know, so if they listen and take some advice, cases would be better, I think.
So again, and so the reason why I'm getting us both kind of worked up on this side of it is how do we fix this? You know, it's not a hey, we're going to fix it tomorrow type of stuff, but how do we go in and empower those people, give them an opportunity to learn, right? Because that's all you can do. You can't tell them. You give them an opportunity. It's those people, as you have said, it depends. It's those people that are going to go in and take those opportunities. So how do we make this available for those people? Because honestly, I think it should be available for anybody to be able to go in and really understand. One, educate them on their digital presence because they're like, what? I do what? You know this about me because of this, right? Make people maybe a little more cognizant of their stupidity. And then two, being able to go and educate those people that have to defend someone. And three, being able to go in and, hey, how can I go in as, to assist my, my government or the law enforcement office that I work for to make sure when I go to a scene and I understand that there's a freaking hard drive that's sitting under there, an SD card that's sitting over here, it's quite possible that might contain some evidence.
Yeah, that's difficult. I think the best way is go to state bar associations and have this mandated training, and then you'll have all the attorneys go to this mandated training. And many of them are going to say, I'm only here because of the hours. And some of them are there because they want to learn. And hopefully the ones that are just there because they have to be will get a spark in their eye of, oh my gosh, on this other case I have, this would be great, and that'd be a great way. On the law enforcement side, it's a revolving door as it is. People,
Mm-hmm.
the way it works in the agencies, you pick somebody for that forensic job, they get really good at it, and then they're back in patrol, or they're or they're
Right.
doing so, or they're promoted,
Right.
and then it's a revolving door again. So I don't
Right.
see a solution to that at all, because I don't believe that's going to change, and until that does change. Um,
Yeah, unfortunately, so a lot of like the CSIs, the crime scene investigators, and a lot of those types of duties have been transitioned throughout the country to civilians, right?
right.
And so the problem is on the digital forensic side of making them civilians is that there's no government that's going to be able to, or law enforcement that's going to be able to afford them,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I know of multi-jurisdictional attempts to have like a roving type of
Right.
CSI team. But then you get into I mean, I was on a SWAT team, multi-jurisdictional SWAT team, and there always seems to be one city where we served a lot of warrants, and some cities
Exactly.
we served no warrants. And then you get to the well, why are we all paying the same amount of money and only one of us are getting all the search? So see the same thing with the forensic world too. Is someone's going to be overusing it, someone's underusing it, so there's always that money aspect of it. I don't know
Yeah,
the
and I think
solution.
I think also a lot of these smaller jurisdictions, especially with digital forensics, where they're driving hundreds of miles to go in and take it to a state lab or take it to a regional, say an FBI sponsored or a Secret Service sponsored a lab. It's difficult, right? Because the backlog, especially if they're going and supplying it regionally or statewide, that becomes a huge issue, and I think that becomes a deterrent to those people who want to process digital evidence. They're like, yeah, shit. You know what? When I had to take this last week, it took. I got the results back, or they said I'm going to get the results back in 2 months. And so I think that's a deterrent as well to those people that don't have it.
Well, one solution, yeah, I worked narcs for a lot of years. And, we had if you're rush filing a case, well, you take drugs off the street, do a field test. At least in Washington State at that time, I don't probably now or different. You could file a case on a field test, a
Right.
positive field test result, right? And if it goes to
Snap it,
snap it,
shake it up.
shake it, it
Yep.
looks positive, you send it off, it's probable cause, file the case. And if it goes to trial, well, before it goes to trial, it's got to be tested by the scientist. At least in Washington, it's the field test is
Yeah.
not going to be reliable for trial. But so many would never go to the lab because they're pleading guilty, lower charges, whatever it is, or dismissing the case. But for cases that were rush filed, like it's not just drugs, but you have a 13-year-old girl that was part of this traffic, all these other things involved. So, well,
Right.
we're going to rush file everything. So we take the drug straight to the lab, have the result within 24 hours from the
Yeah.
scientist, and follow it all at once. So I think as an analogy for that with the digital world, I mean, triage would be the probable cause of filing cases, and then rush filing. I guess we need this right now because it's a homicide or it's a,
Right.
a shooting, whatever. So that could alleviate some backlog, push other cases down the line, of course, that aren't as desperately needed to be charged, but
Right.
it
Right.
just takes
Yeah.
people to put it
It
together.
is, I know, and that's the biggest the issue, right? I mean, more employees, and I think you hit it on the head too. Is transitioning someone. It's just like the Secret Service. They're like, hey, fantastic! I'm super excited. And so yeah, we finally got these guys. They're going to do digital forensics. Super, super excited. Oh crap! Yeah, now you got our protection for the next 3 years.
Yeah,
So you got to go guard the hallway. You got to pee in the hallway. I mean, it's just craziness, and that's why a lot of people won't get into it, or they'll transfer out to a different agency. And so it's again, it hasn't been solved. I mean, it's been like that for a long, long time. And about trying to, and I mean, with the specialized, but again, it's something that we're not going to solve today. I promise
no,
you. But we can go and continue to offer people solutions, right? Especially on the training side, making sure that we offer those up. We have that information that's available for people. So what I want you to do, right? Again, I don't want to keep you all day because I swear, we can actually talk Joe Rogan style for 3 hours.
yeah,
We could, I promise. But So what I want you to do is let people know, one, your all the website stuff, any of with the social media stuff, and then also where you're going to be next, where you're going to be talking, where people might be able to see you. Do the whole little
The whole spiel.
the whole spiel.
All right. Brettshavers.com is my personal blog. Some forensics spattered in there, and some stories that are, personal, I guess. DFIR.training for free stuff, software, list of trainings, that kind of, got all that kind of stuff in there. My Twitter is Brett_Shavers. That's my personal, and then I run the DFIR training Twitter, which is all forensic stuff there. I'm speaking at Magnet Summit. I think that's next month. I'm keynoting at Techno Security, the South Carolina Techno in May. I think I have another one that's tentative later. I'll talk about that one later. I have a book coming out this month, at least for pre-order. It's the second edition of the X-Ways Forensics Practitioner's Guide. It should have been out last year, but it was more than a simple rewrite because the software has changed 1,000 times over, so it's taking a little bit longer. So that's coming out. I have another book that I'm under NDA with right now, so we're waiting to release that one. That one involves foreign country government corruption, planted
That
digital.
happens.
More, the book is it's a cuckoo's nest kind of a book with forensics and death and assassinations and everything. So
I
it's actually,
love that.
yes, that's it's not just me, it's somebody else.
Dang, do you need an actor? I'll like star in your movie when it comes out. Do something
You
like
know,
that.
it's one of those stories that you read and you go, it can't be true, but there
But
it
it
is in
is.
black and white. So that won't be out for by a year, but we're going to be working on it now. And like I said, we got NDA on it until we get some things approved with what we're going to do with that. So that's be coming out pretty soon, or I'm sorry, the NDA be coming out pretty soon. Information, and I think that's where I'm at.
That's just it? Are you sure? Man,
Yeah, I
come
think that's it. I think I got a couple hours left in the day. So,
on. Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. No, as always, I really do appreciate the conversation, and especially what you put out, to the community and trying to get this information. I'm always pushing and doing this and trying to say, hey, make sure we can solve all the world's problems on DFIR type of things. But obviously, that's not going to happen. But I think that moving in the right way of trying to educate, making sure people have access to those materials, because again, we're not going to force people to do it, but make sure they have access to that. Make sure people can be accessible as well, and they're not like some scary person to talk to. So any of the information that one you give, I really appreciate it, and I, again, thank you for putting up with me again
yeah.
for over an hour.
Well,
Right.
it works both ways there. That's so.
Always good because hey, you made it. You made it back. I appreciate you setting some time up for me. So we will do it again. I promise you.
My pleasure. I look
And I'll
forward to
probably
it.
see you in techno.
I'll be
I
there.
think I think I am showing up. So awesome. Cool.
Perfect.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Oh man. So again, like I said, we could have probably went on hours to do that and have this have the conversations because there's so much information. I think the key, the takeaway on this is really education, having access to that. Making sure that one, especially if you're the operator and you're going in, and I think it's important that you educate those people that are giving you direction, right? They're telling you what you need to do, but you need to explain to them why you're doing it so that they understand it maybe for the next time. Because that's extremely important, and the biggest thing is don't make assumptions as they know what you're talking about. So a lot of key takeaways. I do appreciate everyone's time, and we'll be back again next week, and with another one of these with another great person from the industry. I do appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.